Perhaps it can be suggested that the making option or because first of all we add water and sugar to the yeast to activate it so that it froths and bubbles, and then to the flour and mixed together. And like the three levels of life, our street smarts, our intuition, and our interrelatedness, when they combine together to become Satchitananda, one, they can no longer be separated. And then the dough is put aside to rise, and then it's beaten down, kneaded vigorously, and then put aside again to leaven and rise, and then beaten down again before it's left to rise, and then shaped and placed in the oven. And perhaps you'll remember that story of the young man who lived at the foot of a very high mountain. But he was quite special in that from the earliest age he wanted to know the ways of spirit. He sought out the books, his village, and whispered widely that at the top of the mountain lived a great sage. One day he would be worthy to go up the mountain to sit before going to go and meet the master. And so he did. It was a great effort, even though he was young and agile, to climb the steep slope. Finally he came to a ledge, and as he climbed over the ledge, there, seated on a rock, before the opening to a great, dark, cavernous cave, sat the old sage, his long beard reaching down between his crossed legs. His black and piercing eyes met those of the young man, who fell onto his knees and said, "I've come to seek your teaching into the ways of spirit. Please, will you accept me?" And as the young man looked, the eyes of the sage seemed to become piercing points of light. And he looked at him and, pointing his finger, said, "Go!" But the young man said, "I've studied, I know the texts, I've learned the great ways of the past and the teachings." "Go," said the great sage. Tears began to flow down the face of the young man as he placed his head on the ground. But please, won't you accept me?" "Go," said the saint. So scrambling, the young man got up and went down the mountain. But his feet seemed to be lighter, and traversing that steep slope somehow seemed so much easier than the climb. He came to his parents' home, and he gathered together a little knapsack with some bread and cheese, and told his parents that the next day he would be setting out. His parents said, "But why? We thought you were going to stay and be taught by the great saint." And the young man said, "My master has said, go, go, go." So the next day the young man set out with his knapsack on the road, not knowing where it would lead. But it led him to many adventures, some good, some bad. There were places where he stopped that seduced him to stay, the farmer's daughter who fell in love with him, the trader who found that his ethics and his ways were worthy to make him an assistant. And the years passed, and he became wise. He showed distinct signs of what is called enlightenment. People started to come to him for advice and guidance. And middle age was upon him, until one day he thought, "I'm tired of journeying. It's time for me to return home." And so he set out for his home village. When he arrived there, his parents long since dead, but the hut in which they lived still intact. He stood in the doorway of this home and looked up at the mountain and thought to himself, I wonder if the old saint is still there." And so he set out, even though middle age was upon him. His gait was light, so the climb was easy. He came to the ledge, and lifting himself over, there was the old saint sitting in the same position on his rock before the opening to the great cavernous darkness of the cave behind him. He stood before the saint and bowed his head, no longer needing to supplicate and kneel and beg as he had in his youth. The old saint arose to his feet, and the dark, deep, piercing eyes met those of the now middle-aged man, and a great smile lit up his face, and he said, "Before, when you came, I said, go, go, go. And now I say, come, come, come." And taking his hand, he led the now middle-aged man into the entrance of the great cave. What is it that you see, that you experience after your journey of what the simple metaphor of the bread, what does it mean to be baked, to be placed in the oven? And how does this relate to this story? The saint now leading the once seeker into the dark opening of what appears to be a great and cavernous darkness. What is it that we find when we enter that cave? Is it like the Buddha sitting under the Bodhi tree saying, I'm not moving from here until it's done? Is it like a Milarepa in his cave, having the entrance sealed, having nowhere to go, nothing to do, and nothing to be? What are you finding is the experience of the oven, the cave, the cessation? What is its meaning? How can we compare what we see as the heat of the oven and the darkness of the cave? Unable to escape from either. What is happening for you?